The person you love is pleading with you. Please read this message before it disappears. I don't want to lose you. My beloved child, hold your heart for just one more moment, because the message you are about to hear feels as though it crossed impossible distances just to find you before it fades away. Imagine this for a second. What if someone you never truly left behind has been carrying words too heavy to keep hidden any longer? What if this very moment is the only opening they believe they have left? Listen closely, because this is not a story about chasing the past. It is about recognizing the quiet moments that shape tomorrow before tomorrow arrives. Somewhere beyond the noise of everyday life, a voice keeps repeating the same sentence. Please read this message before it disappears. I don't want to lose you. Strange, isn't it? Those words are simple, yet they seem to carry an entire future inside them. Stay with this thought a little longer, because what follows changes the meaning of everything you thought you understood. The person you love has spent far longer searching for the right words than anyone realizes. Not because they lacked feelings, but because they feared that the wrong sentence might close a door forever. Every unfinished conversation, every pause that lasted a little too long, every moment when silence replaced honesty slowly built an invisible wall between two hearts that were never meant to become strangers. Yet something unexpected has happened. They have finally realized that silence protects nothing. It only creates distance where closeness once lived. And now, standing at the edge of a choice they can no longer avoid, they are reaching toward you with a message they hope arrives before time quietly carries it away. But here is the question that changes everything. What if this message was never only about them? What if it has been waiting for the exact version of you who is listening today? Picture a horizon where every missed opportunity transforms into understanding instead of regret. That is the future hidden inside this moment. The person you love is no longer asking for perfection. They are asking for presence. They are hoping that somewhere beyond assumptions, beyond unanswered questions, beyond all the stories both of you created inside your own minds, there is still a chance to begin again with clearer eyes and a calmer heart. Before you move on, hear this one line carefully. Some messages are not powerful because they are dramatic. They become unforgettable because they arrive exactly when someone is finally ready to understand them. And this is only the beginning. What they reveal next is something they have never allowed themselves to say out loud before, and when those words finally surface, you may discover that the future you imagined was only the first chapter of a much greater story. A quiet shift is already taking place. And if you listen carefully, you may notice that this story is no longer moving the way you expected. The person you love has reached a point where pretending feels heavier than telling the truth. For so long, they convinced themselves that waiting would somehow solve everything. They believed another day would bring the perfect opportunity, another conversation would create the perfect opening, another sign would erase every doubt. But none of those moments ever arrived. Instead, they watched time continue forward while the words they wanted to share remained locked inside them. Then something happened that changed everything. They imagined what life would feel like if they never said what was truly in their heart. That single thought stopped them completely. They suddenly understood that losing a chance because of fear would hurt far more than risking honesty. And that is why this message feels so different. It is no longer written from uncertainty. It is written from clarity. The voice you are hearing now carries one simple hope: that distance does not become the final chapter. Stay a little longer, because the next realization is even more surprising. Sometimes the greatest turning point begins with a sentence that almost remained unspoken forever. Here is the truth they have been afraid to admit. Every memory connected to you has quietly become part of the way they see the future. Ordinary places remind them of conversations that never really ended. Ordinary mornings make them wonder how different life could feel if one honest moment had happened sooner. They have discovered that moving forward without understanding feels impossible, because every path somehow circles back to the same question. What if I had simply told them everything? That question follows them more often than they expected. It appears during quiet evenings, unexpected smiles, and even in moments when life seems perfectly normal. They now realize they were never searching for perfect timing. They were searching for enough courage to stop hiding behind uncertainty. If these words resonate with you, perhaps leave a comment sharing the one quality you believe keeps people connected through every season of life. And if this journey speaks to your heart, you are always welcome to stay with this community by subscribing, so we can continue exploring these moments together. But don't drift away yet, because the message has not reached its most meaningful line. What comes next explains why this moment feels unlike any other. Now imagine the future from a completely different perspective. Instead of asking what was lost, imagine asking what can still be created. That is the vision beginning to grow inside the person you love. They no longer want their story to be remembered for hesitation. They want it to become a story of courage, understanding, and quiet transformation. The message they are trying to send is not asking you to carry yesterday's weight. It is inviting you to see tomorrow through new eyes. They want you to know that every meaningful connection reaches a moment where honesty becomes stronger than fear, where hope becomes louder than doubt, and where one decision can redirect an entire journey. Before this message disappears into silence, they want you to remember one final thought: sometimes the greatest gift is not finding someone new, but finally seeing the value of someone whose light never truly left your path. Hold on to that feeling, because the next words they reveal will uncover the one truth they believed they could never confess, and once you hear it, every moment leading to today will suddenly make perfect sense. Wait just a little longer, because the words you are about to hear were never meant to remain hidden forever. The person you love has finally reached the place where silence no longer feels safe. For the longest time, they believed they could protect both of you by keeping certain emotions buried deep inside. They smiled when they were expected to smile, carried on with ordinary routines, and convinced everyone around them that everything was perfectly fine. But beneath that calm surface, another story was quietly unfolding. Every day they realized that the memories they tried to leave behind only became clearer. Every attempt to move in another direction somehow brought them back to the same realization: you were never just another chapter. You became the sentence their heart kept rereading when everything else became uncertain. That frightened them at first, because accepting such a truth meant accepting that some connections refuse to disappear no matter how much time passes. And then came the moment that changed everything. They stopped asking themselves how to forget, and started asking how to make sure they never lose what truly matters again. You'll understand everything at the end, because this next revelation explains why this message feels so urgent. There is one confession they have carried longer than anyone could imagine. It is not about a mistake that cannot be repaired or a perfect ending that was guaranteed. It is much simpler, and somehow much more powerful. They are finally admitting that they underestimated the quiet strength of your presence. They thought they would always have another opportunity to explain, another chance to reach out, another tomorrow to say the words they kept postponing. But life has a remarkable way of reminding us that the moments we delay often become the moments we treasure the most. That realization awakened something inside them that could no longer be ignored. They no longer measure success by how carefully they hide their emotions. They measure it by whether they are brave enough to let the truth be seen. That is why this message feels different from every thought they kept to themselves before. It carries no disguise, no hesitation, and no complicated mask. It simply says, if there is still a path forward, I want to walk it with honesty. Imagine hearing those words not as a promise of certainty, but as the beginning of genuine understanding. Sometimes that single shift is enough to change the direction of an entire future. And now the final piece of today's message begins to appear. The person you love wants you to know that hope is rarely loud. It usually arrives quietly, disguised as one last conversation, one unexpected realization, or one decision to stop running from what has always felt true. They believe this moment found you for a reason, not to pull you backward, but to remind you that the future is still being written. Somewhere ahead, beyond today's questions and yesterday's silence, there is a version of this story where honesty replaces confusion, where patience transforms into clarity, and where two people finally recognize the value they almost overlooked. Before this chapter closes, remember this: the strongest connections are not defined by how perfect the journey has been, but by the courage to keep choosing truth when it would be easier to walk away. The message may fade, but its meaning does not. Because what is about to happen next is something even they never imagined, the answer they have been waiting for may already be moving toward them, and when that moment arrives, everything you have heard so far will suddenly reveal its true purpose. For one last moment, stay with this feeling, because the message has reached the point where everything hidden begins to reveal its true shape. The person you love is no longer wondering whether they should speak. They are wondering whether they waited too long. That thought has followed them through quiet mornings and sleepless nights, reminding them that every unspoken truth creates another layer of distance. Yet something remarkable happened when they finally stopped fighting their own heart. Instead of seeing the future as a place filled with uncertainty, they began to see it as a blank page that still welcomes a new beginning. They realized that the greatest risk was never opening up. It was allowing fear to decide the ending before either of you had the chance to write it together. That realization changed the way they looked at every memory, every smile, every unfinished conversation. Suddenly, none of those moments felt like mistakes anymore. They felt like signs pointing toward a conversation that was always meant to happen. Before you continue, ask yourself one quiet question: what if the most meaningful chapter of this story has not happened yet? Hold that thought, because the next truth carries a kind of hope that cannot be forced, it can only be discovered. Something else has been growing inside them, something they never expected. They have begun to understand that real connection is not built through flawless moments but through honest ones. Every fear they carried slowly lost its power the moment they chose truth over hesitation. They no longer wish they had been someone different. They simply wish they had trusted their heart sooner. And now, if this journey has touched something inside you, perhaps share your thoughts in the comments about what honesty means to you. If these stories continue to bring you reflection and hope, you are warmly invited to stay connected by subscribing and sharing this message with someone who may need these words today. Sometimes a single story reaches exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. But don't leave just yet. Because the final piece of this message is closer than ever, and it holds the answer they have been searching for all along. Now the horizon looks different than it did when this message first began. The person you love no longer sees a future defined by silence or missed opportunities. Instead, they see a path illuminated by courage, patience, and the willingness to understand before making assumptions. They want you to know that no meaningful connection is ever strengthened by pretending to feel less than you truly do. It grows when two hearts decide that honesty is worth more than pride and that hope is stronger than uncertainty. Their final wish is beautifully simple: if this message reaches you before it disappears, let it remind you that every ending also carries the possibility of a new beginning. Some moments arrive quietly, almost unnoticed, yet they become the ones remembered for a lifetime because they inspire someone to take the first step toward a brighter tomorrow. And as this chapter closes, another door is already beginning to open, because the words waiting on the other side are not about what was almost lost, they are about what may finally be found. A new chapter is quietly unfolding, and it begins with something neither of you expected. The person you love has stopped searching for the perfect explanation because they have discovered that the heart rarely speaks in perfect sentences. It speaks through courage, through quiet decisions, and through the willingness to show up when it would be easier to remain silent. They keep returning to one thought that refuses to leave them: if this message reaches them, perhaps nothing is truly over. That thought has become stronger than every doubt they once carried. They no longer measure time by the days that have passed but by the opportunities that still remain. Every sunrise now feels like another chance to become the person they wished they had been sooner. They are beginning to understand that the future is not written by the moments we fear, it is written by the moments we finally embrace with an open heart. Pause here for a second and imagine this. What if the very conversation you thought would never happen is already moving closer than you realize? Sometimes destiny doesn't announce itself with noise. It arrives quietly, waiting for someone brave enough to notice. The message they wanted you to read before it disappeared was never meant to create pressure. It was meant to bring clarity. They want you to know that behind every unanswered question was a sincere hope that one day understanding would replace uncertainty. They have learned something unexpected through this journey: people often protect their hearts so carefully that they accidentally hide the very feelings they long to share. That realization has changed them. Instead of wondering how they appear to others, they now wonder how they can become more genuine with the people who truly matter. They imagine a future where conversations are no longer interrupted by hesitation, where every meaningful word arrives at the right moment because both hearts are finally ready to hear it. Before you move forward, remember this thought: the strongest connections are not built in extraordinary moments alone. They are strengthened through small acts of honesty that quietly reshape everything around them. And perhaps that is exactly what this message has been preparing you to recognize all along. As this journey reaches its final horizon, one beautiful truth remains. The person you love no longer wants this story to be remembered for silence, confusion, or missed chances. They want it to be remembered as the moment when everything began to change. They believe every meaningful connection carries a hidden turning point, a single instant when fear steps aside and hope takes its place. Maybe this is that instant. Maybe this message appeared not to tell you what your future must be, but to remind you that every future is shaped by awareness, kindness, and the courage to choose understanding over assumption. So let these words stay with you long after this narration ends. Carry them as a reminder that some messages disappear from the screen, but never from the heart. And somewhere beyond today's horizon, another remarkable chapter is already waiting to unfold. One that neither of you could have imagined when this message first found its way to you. Just when it seems the story has reached its final page, another truth quietly reveals itself. The person you love has come to understand that some connections are never measured by how often two people speak, but by how deeply they continue to inspire one another, even through silence. That realization changed everything inside them. Instead of looking back with regret, they began looking ahead with purpose. They no longer wish they could rewrite yesterday. They simply want to make tomorrow more meaningful than anything left unfinished behind them. Every lesson, every pause, every unanswered question has led them to this single understanding: nothing valuable should remain unspoken when the opportunity to share it still exists. Their heart feels lighter now, not because every answer has appeared, but because they are no longer hiding from the truth that has been guiding them all along. And perhaps that is the greatest transformation of all. Imagine standing at the edge of a brand new horizon, realizing that what once felt like an ending was quietly becoming the beginning of something wiser, calmer, and stronger. Before this chapter moves on, hold on to one thought. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not finding a different path, but seeing your own path with completely new eyes. The message that almost disappeared has now become something much greater than a collection of words. It has become a reminder that every meaningful relationship is shaped by moments of awareness. The person you love hopes you remember that no journey remains exactly the same forever. Seasons change. Perspectives grow. Hearts learn. Even the longest periods of uncertainty can eventually give way to remarkable clarity. They have discovered that genuine strength is not found in pretending to have every answer. It is found in remaining open to growth, understanding, and honest conversation. That is why this message carries so much quiet hope. It asks for nothing except your willingness to see beyond first impressions and temporary silence. What if the greatest gift waiting ahead is not a dramatic surprise, but a peaceful certainty that both hearts have finally learned what truly matters? That possibility alone has given them the courage to believe in tomorrow again. They no longer fear what the future might hold, they are inspired by what it could become when guided by sincerity instead of hesitation. And now, as these final moments settle gently into your heart, remember that every remarkable story leaves behind one lasting question. Not a question of doubt, but of possibility. What kind of future becomes possible when people choose truth instead of fear, hope instead of assumption, and understanding instead of distance? The person you love believes the answer begins with a single decision made in complete honesty. They believe every meaningful connection deserves the chance to grow beyond yesterday's uncertainty and into tomorrow's brighter vision. So let this message remain with you, not as something that vanished, but as something that awakened a new perspective. Because some words are never